Chuck Hagel getting grilled during his confirmation hearings to be our next Secretary of Defense. Some of the most intense questions coming from fellow Republicans who didn't exactly treat him with, well, kid gloves. Listen to this exchange with Senator John McCain.
Will you please answer the question? Were you correct or incorrect when you said that the surge would be the most dangerous foreign policy blunder in this country since Vietnam? Were you correct or incorrect? Yes or no?
My reference to the surge being the most dangerous.
Senator Hagel, the question is, were you right or wrong? That's a pretty straightforward question.
Well,
I would like to answer whether you were right or wrong, and then you are free to elaborate.
Well, I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer on a lot of things.
Show that you refused to answer that question.
Well, John McCain may have missed his calling. He should have been a lawyer. So how many Republicans will vote for their former colleagues? Let's bring in these folks, political insiders. John LeBoutillier, former Republican congressman for New York. Caddell, Fox News contributor and a former pollster for President Jimmy Carter. Doug Schoen, he too a Fox News contributor, former pollster for Bill Clinton. All right, so guys, I Googled worst confirmation hearing ever. Right. And up pops Chuck Hagel. See, I thought it would be Judge Bork or John Tower, but no. Hagel got the worst.
Well, here's what happened in a nutshell, Gregg. Bottom line, Chuck Hagel demonstrated why I believe he is not qualified to be Secretary of Defense, but yet there are a couple of Republicans who will vote for him, and I predict that the entire Democratic caucus in the Senate, some 54-55, will vote for him. He will be confirmed, notwithstanding the fact he had misstatements about Iran, wouldn't answer Senator McCain on the surge in Iraq, and bottom line demonstrated to me that he just doesn't know a lot about the job he's most likely going to get.
Did Hagel rise to the level of incompetence?
Well, he pretty much, that's where he landed, sort of, I guess, was incompetent. I thought it was, and I love the containment thing. It was that the word? What was that? Oh, yeah, thank you, Senator Levin, containment. We're doing this. I mean, it was unbelievable, the note passing. But look, here's a bigger factor here. I'm not sure. I think he will probably get confirmed. The issue now is our partisan politics has produced a system where right now every Democrat, including ones who know he doesn't belong as Secretary of Defense, are voting for him. I happen to tell you, I think there are a lot of Democrats in southern states and in Alaska and other states where if there were a concerted effort, because I have seen polling numbers privately that show that when people find out what he has said, this is before the hearing. They go south so fast on this guy, and I'm talking about Democrats and a lot of people care about
stuff security. About Iran and Israel.
But here's the point: Hillary Clinton and Leon Panetta, secretaries respectively of State and Defense, leave office saying Iran is a dangerous problem, which puts them juxtaposition against Hagel
and in fact,
Obama, by the way.
Can we put it, this is out of order, Christine, but can you put up the Hillary Clinton full screen? Because here's what she said. The Iranians are all in for Assad, and there's very little room for any kind of dialogue with them, and yet aren't we hearing from the president that he wants direct negotiations?
The president said he wants direct negotiations if the supreme leader, Khamenei, will countenance them. And bottom line, there is so much chaos, as Pat was speaking to, in the Democratic ranks about what our policy is on Iran, especially with what's going on now in North Africa, Gregg, in Mali, Algeria, Mauritania. This is really a real problem.
But here's where the Republicans need to get their acting gear and step up and take advantage of that confusion and that vacuum. And I don't think John McCain's the way to do it. I think that little clip you played was an extreme example.
How about this clip? Play this clip, Christine, will you please? The note passing, but please.
By the way, I've just been handed a note that I misspoke and said I supported the president's position on containment. If I said that, it meant to say that obviously his position on containment, we don't have a position on containment. So I recognize I've had more attention paid to my words the last 8 weeks than I ever thought possible, but so I don't take any chances.
You know, I would love to know what the real note said.
Well,
You
wait
were
a
in
second. Here's
complete
what
blank.
it is. It says containment is our policy. Hey, you know, the sad thing is, seriously, is you would like to think that the man or woman who's in charge of the Defense Department is really on top of this thing. This is vital. Do you have any faith that that guy knows anything on a number of fronts? Afghanistan, Iran, China, sequestration. We're going to be facing huge cuts that have to be done smartly in the defense budget. I have no faith, and he is a Republican. I'm a Republican, and I don't feel.
But I want to let me go. I just want to jump back on this North Africa. There is a fundamental beyond Hagel. There's a fundamental problem. The president's real policy is not necessarily that of Panetta and Clinton. I think we're watching the president move to his natural position, which is wrong, really wrong, which the country doesn't understand. Go back to your point: the Republicans have an opportunity. Democrats are going to have a problem. He is way left, and I think that's why he wants Hagel.
And this was the point I was about to make. Secretary Clinton, by all accounts, was far more aggressive in supporting the Libyan undertaking, supporting the Syrian opposition, taking on terror in North Africa than the president has been. And bottom line, what Pat is speaking to and John spoke to are exactly right, Greg. There is a huge, huge division in Democratic ranks that Republicans have yet to exploit. And Secretary Panetta, he spoke directly to these issues in his outgoing interviews and has spoken about the need to protect the defense budget.
But is it your sense, Pat, that in terms of policy, Hagel will be a non-factor?
No.
Now, go ahead and cut the budget, and we'll look at your numbers. But in terms of policy,
he is so weak. He is a cipher there. And by the way, you're the principal defense advisor of the president, besides the Joint Chiefs on the civilian side.
Tom Donilon.
And Tom, this is all for the White House consolidate. Look what happened in Mali, though. Very instructive.
Right.
What was the White House first instinct to say? Oh, we have no interest there. Then I think Panetta and Clinton pushed back. Now that's a story the mainstream media, if we wait this long forever, ought to be getting into. Who's running policy? The White House policy is basically one of retreat.
John, final word.
I think that Hagel will have no influence on policy whatsoever. He is a front man for massive budget cuts in the Pentagon that Obama needs to do in order to keep financing the social safety net, because he doesn't want to cut anything there.
Panetta says will be destructive
bottom
to
line,
national
we have
security.
no answers about what Al-Qaeda is doing in North Africa and what the risk is to ourselves.
Disappointing economic numbers coming out this week. First up was the GDP showing the economy actually shrank in the last quarter of 2012. Then came, of course, the jobs report on Friday. The nation's unemployment rate, there it is for January, inching up. Now at 7.9%. What's the political impact? Let's bring them back in. John LeBoutillier, Pat Caddell, Doug Schoen. Guys, we just got a clip of the president, his usual pre-Super Bowl interview. Take a listen.
Overall, there were a lot of positive signs in the economy. The big problem was defense spending was cut 22%. It was the biggest drop in 40 years, and it was very abrupt. And it had to do with folks being worried about the possible impacts of the fiscal cliff and what goes on here in Washington. And what I've said repeatedly is, Washington cannot continually operate under a cloud of crisis. That freezes up consumers. It gets businesses worried. We can't afford these self-inflicted wounds.
We can't deal with crisis? Isn't that what Washington's all about?
It's what Washington's all about, but it's something even more. I mean, Greg, he's the president. He is the personification of what Washington is. And what he's doing there is saying the problems in the economy, which are still clear, we're not out of the woods by any means, are the responsibility of somebody other than himself, presumably Congress. But bottom line, he didn't resolve the issues with the fiscal cliff, with sequestration. We haven't heard anything from the president about that, and now he's out there blaming the opposition.
John?
The first thing, this interview was done today, but on Wednesday when these numbers came out, the White House spokesman, Jay Carney, the first thing he said was, House Republicans caused this. They love blaming others. And as Doug said, he's the personification of the U.S. government. Why, for the last year and a half, has he not been able to take his own budget deal, the Simpson-Bowles Commission, and sell it to the American people.
Because he doesn't support it.
Well, stop saying. I want to jump in. Jimmy Carter had in his desk the original sign Harry Truman had. The buck stops here.
Right.
This is the anti-buck stops here. Everyone's at fault
The
but
buck
me.
stops everywhere else.
But me. And to say that we went into actually losing, GDP went from 2.1% growth, which wasn't
Now
great,
it's negative.
to a negative,
Negative 0.01.
and say that it's because of 1 month of defense spending cuts. By the way, he has been the person advocating
What are you
defense
saying?
cuts.
It's total nonsense?
I'm saying it's not only total nonsense, it's totally
It's ludicrous.
bull crap. It is. But by the way, he gets away with it. The mainstream media, most of the networks, ABC, NBC, they didn't even cover the drop. Then we have unemployment go up. Now look, there's the economists say all the underlying things are great in the market. Something's wrong here, and he's the president, and to continue to blame it on everybody else
one of the
is
things
not going
that
to work
is wrong
eventually.
is that the Republican Party, and John, you can speak to this, has no credible alternative narrative, no argument. I mean, Eric Cantor's going to do a speech at AEI this week to outline another vision. But bottom line, the Republicans have no answer to what Pat was talking about.
And they haven't had one for 2 years.
Why
And
is that, John?
It's the same as we talked about in the first segment on foreign policy. There is no voice that speaks to the mainstream of America on these two issues.
You know why?
If the Republicans seized Simpson-Bowles and sold it, that thing will be very popular if the
When
country
you
knew
can't
about
even
it.
get Paul Ryan, who sat on the Bowles-Simpson board, to vote in favor of
Look,
this thing.
Greg, let me tell you something. You know
Then
what the
you're
true
pretty
truth
much-
is? Washington doesn't care about the economy. They are rich. They're rolling in money. The president even mentioned his inaugural. They want to talk about, and so what are we dealing with? Immigration, which is a longer-term issue, guns, but we're not dealing with still the fundamental problem of an economy with millions of people who can't get jobs. And
the
you know why
top
they don't
issue in this
care?
country is jobs and the economy. Neither side is
Cares
talking
enough.
about how to revitalize the economy, create jobs, promote economic growth. There's no comprehensive fiscal plan, tax plan, or budget. Bottom line, it's a broken system.
All interested in partisan division, debate, and what little advantage I can get today, led by a president who ought to go see Lincoln again and try to figure out what it's about.
Yeah, I'm sensing a little frustration here from you, John.
There is a little frustration.
Well, you know
You're
why?
right.
Because the system only works if the players in the system are honest in the way they play it. They're supposed to represent the people that sent them there. They don't give a hoot about them. They don't care. They're happy in their own
the
life.
mainstream media pretty much sucks up to him.
We
Oh my
haven't
God.
seen any serious critique of the
Has
administration.
anybody asked him a tough question?
Did Scott Pelley
Or
or
as I
Steve
said-
Croft last week on 60 Minutes, did they ask him a tough question? Did they ever?
Embarrassing softballs. They ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Well, they're
All right.
supposed to
Doug
protect the
Schoen,
people.
Pat Caddell, John LeBoutillier. Good to see you guys.
Good
You
to
can
see
catch
you.
more of the Political Insiders every Monday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, live.foxnews.com. They'll be back here, of course, next Sunday. You can also follow them on Twitter at FN Insiders. Heather?